Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Michelle Meyer. I'm the Director of Continuing Education at the Center for Occupational and Environmental Health. And it is my delight to be joined here today by Richard Hirsh. And I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for having me. My name is Richard Hirsh. I'm the Senior Director for Environmental Health and Safety here at Nektar Therapeutics. We're a research and development company focused on cancer research and also autoimmune diseases. I've been here for almost 12 years and lead the EH&S program at our San Francisco, Alabama, and India locations. Prior to that, I was involved for 20 years with the chemical industry, working for Rohm and Haas Company. We had 125 sites in 27 countries. And then also a shorter stint with another pharmaceutical company that had about 9 sites globally. Anyway, I'd like to talk to you about some of my experiences.
Excellent. Well, I guess we'll jump right on in. Can you tell us a little bit about what is an industrial hygienist? What is it that you do?
Sure. So in my view, an industrial hygienist is a person who, through their education, their experiences and training, is able to anticipate, recognize, evaluate, manage, and control hazards, any type of hazard. And those could be chemical in nature, various chemical hazardous compounds, biological like viruses, bacteria, COVID, foodborne diseases, mold, fungi, physical in nature, such as noise or vibration or ionizing or non-ionizing radiation, or even ergonomic hazards. So we tend to focus on exposure assessments for any of those types of hazards as industrial hygienists. As the Senior Director for EHS at Nektar, I develop and implement our strategies to set company policy, develop training materials, standard operating procedures, software tools, and ensure my global team of about 10 are adequately resourced to meet the goals and objectives each year in order to support our business. We integrate multiple disciplines: environmental, safety, industrial hygiene, biostatistics, medical surveillance, personal protective equipment, including respiratory protection, sanitation, federal, state, and local regulatory aspects from the US EPA to CalOHA to the Department of Public Health in San Francisco, the fire department, et cetera. Sampling and analytical methodology to actually measure exposures in air or on surfaces. Process safety to make sure we are not blowing up our research laboratories. Product stewardship to make sure our drugs are handled and used appropriately and the people handling them are protected adequately. Leading a safety committee across our 3 sites to help implement some of our programs. Emergency response activities for a spill or a medical emergency or a fire or what have you. Business continuity, making sure our supply chain is robust and that we can operate in the event we had to evacuate the building or our facility was shut down due to an earthquake or some other natural or man-made disaster. And also building a positive safety culture in the organization that is sustainable and sustainability in general, and looking at the worker population, not only at work, but also holistically in their community, at home, et cetera. I've had opportunities to learn and evaluate hazards and recommend controls for a variety of research and development and manufacturing and industrial processes around the world in biotechnology, in the pharma world, the electronics industry, plastic additives, biocides, plexiglass you may have heard of, acrylic polymers, ion exchange resins, oil additives, monomers used in various polymerization reactions, agricultural products, fungicides, herbicides, pesticides, even salt production, going into mines, the vacuum panning, solar evaporation, different types of solar salt production, and many other hazardous operations. I'll leave it there.
Wow. So quite a lot of different things that are touched by your department. Oh, not even just in the United States, but around the world. So many different processes involved. Thank you so much for sharing that synopsis with us.
Sure.
Well, and for someone who's just getting into your field, are there any common misconceptions about what it is that you do?
Yeah, I think, one of the old running jokes is that because we're called industrial hygienists, that for some reason they think we floss workers' teeth, which is obviously not the case. It's also quite a misperception that industrial hygiene is really only about sampling and measuring hazardous chemical concentrations in air and putting on sampling pumps on workers as what is affectionately known as a pump jockey. That's really at the technician level. When in fact, what we do involves a wide range of activities. I mentioned some of those before, but setting company policy, developing standard operating procedures, ensuring our regulatory compliance, so being well-versed in all the regulations that apply to our business operations, providing EHS training on a variety of topics, hazard communication for safety data sheets, and being able to read a label, and transporting hazardous materials, the engineering controls, ventilation, local exhaust ventilation, enclosures for containing hazardous materials, fume hoods, biological safety cabinets, those types of engineering controls, as well as hazardous waste handling, chemical and biological hazards, personal protective equipment, making sure people have the right respirator, the right gloves, splash aprons, eye safety wear, face shields, etc. And then also, in today's environment, protocols for COVID. I'm really sort of COVID central here in Nektar, dealing with our case management for any positive cases, our testing protocols, our nursing support, contracted service, return to workplace training, and our disinfection protocol in case we have to decontaminate any work areas, all the COVID supplies from sanitizing wipes to surgical masks and other items, the signage we've placed around the building, and also the regulatory aspects from CalOHA to the Department of Public Health to the Centers for Disease Control, and so forth. Also dealing with potent drug compound handling. We handle very potent compounds used for cancer. And we want to make sure our workers are not being exposed to those materials while they're doing their research. Our ergonomics program, making sure that people are set up properly at their office workstation and also in their laboratory or manufacturing environment in terms of manual materials handling, repetitive tasks such as pipetting, those types of things. Radiation program. Up until recently, we had radioactive isotopes and needing to make sure that we're handling them according to regulation and protecting our workforce. Noise issues, making sure we're protecting people's hearing. Medical surveillance, working closely with occupational physicians and our occupational health clinic to make sure people are in good health. Department of Transportation and air shipments of hazardous materials, just to name a few, as well as the exposure assessments we conduct regularly for tasks and processes associated with the hazards I mentioned.
It's amazing to hear all of those different things because, I know we're just starting to scratch the surface of everything that goes into keeping people safe at work. So, wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that overview. Sure. Can you also speak to your background? How did you get into industrial hygiene? What made you say, this is the career for me?
Well, I reflected on that, and I would have to say it might go back to when I was about 15 years old working in a car wash I didn't even hear what industrial hygiene was back then. But I was working there on weekends, and this operation really didn't give its workers any personal protective equipment in any way, and they basically sent me out back with a bucket of caustic lye and a brush to apply to the hubcaps of cars to clean them off. And I was wearing, as a 15-year-old, I'm wearing my high top sneakers, I think Pro-Keds at the time, and the caustic lye liquid would just permeate and soak right through my sneakers and actually burn several toes at that time. And I thought, there must be a safer way to do this work. Even in high school, I was very interested in biology, and that became my college major. And I wanted to focus on proactive health measures, not waiting till people get sick, but what can we do up front to protect them before they face a hazardous situation. And then after undergraduate school, I started working with an environmental activist nonprofit organization, working on aerial pesticide spraying in communities and developing a household hazardous waste collection program for San Francisco. And I also got to learn the regulatory arena in the Bay Area, the Air District and Bay Area Air Quality Management District and California Resources Board and the Water Control Board, et cetera. And I wanted to learn how to quantify exposures to hazardous agents, not just claim that they were all toxic and that people were being overexposed, but I really want to know how much is too much. Are we below exposure limits that have been set? And that oriented me to go back to graduate school in the Environmental Health Sciences program at UC Berkeley in the School of Public Health. And that offered me the technical skills to provide a scientific approach to addressing those questions and issues. Right around that same time, right after grad school, I volunteered with the Nicaragua Technical Aid Project, a group of concerned occupational health professionals in the Bay Area, had a relationship with the Ministry of Labor in Nicaragua. And there was a case where a US-owned lead battery manufacturing facility had poisoned many of its workers that had acute lead poisoning during the battery manufacturing process. And they asked for volunteers to go down there to help train workers and do assessments and help control those exposures. So I did volunteer for that effort and got to work with a couple other industrial hygienists there to train workers on preventing lead exposure and also helping to design a ventilation system. And that really opened my eyes to the global nature of these issues in the developing world particularly, and the lack of awareness around hazards that pervades even now.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing those personal stories.
Sure.
Very, very powerful to hear about your kind of what inspired you to move forward in this career path. Well, it sounds like you really enjoy your work, but I'd love to know, what do you enjoy most out of all of the different things that you do?
Sure. I would say the most enjoyable aspect of my career, and I've been at it for close to 35 years, has been training others in the industrial hygiene and environmental health and safety discipline. I've had, through my career, the opportunity to travel to over 47 countries and have taught industrial hygiene fundamentals courses to a large variety of global students. These were employees of my company in different facilities around the world that had the responsibility for carrying out the industrial hygiene mission. And I taught in China, Thailand, Argentina, Mexico, throughout Europe, and also throughout the United States. And building capacity in occupational health and safety, particularly in the developing world, has been a very rewarding aspect. And I've maintained many of those relationships that were forged during those training sessions. I also had an opportunity to teach a couple of the Occupational Health Training Association courses in India. This is, if you go to ohlearning.com, you can see many of these free downloadable curricula on various occupational health and safety topics. And I had the opportunity to train about 60 students in 2 different courses on workplace exposure assessment and control. And these students came from all over India to help them go back to their workforces and carry out this type of work. Besides training during my many travels, I've also provided technical assistance to sites and new acquisitions and auditing those facilities against our own internal company policies and programs. One of the outcomes has been founding my own nonprofit called the Developing World Outreach Initiative. It's actually a subcommittee of the American Industrial Hygiene Association's Northern California section. And I started that when I was president of the local section some 16 years ago. And we focus on building occupational health and safety capacity in the developing world and putting on training workshops and doing technical projects in the developing world each year. I also serve on other boards, and this is also very rewarding, to give back to the profession. I've been on the board of the Workplace Health Without Borders U.S. branch. I've served as president of or chair of the International Affairs Committee of the American Industrial Hygiene Association. I serve now as a board member of the California Industrial Hygiene Council. And I also serve for many years now on the Center for Occupational and Environmental Health Advisory Committee for UC Berkeley, UC Davis, and UC San Francisco. And lastly, I do serve on a teen safety committee with the American Industrial Hygiene Association to build awareness for teenagers about their rights and what employers' responsibilities are to them as a vulnerable workforce. And currently, I'm serving as a guest speaker for the Public Health 290 Global Occupational Health and Safety course at the School of Public Health. And I'm delivering 3 lectures this semester, one on sort of the global structure of occupational health and safety organizations from the World Health Organization on down all the way to some of these small nonprofits. And also the exposure assessment process is another lecture. And finally, I'll be talking about the environmental health and safety aspects of the pharmaceutical industry and specifically.
Wow, it's a pleasure to hear about all of the different opportunities, both domestically and abroad, that open for the field of industrial hygiene. There's so many different things you could do in so many directions and so many places.
Yes.
That's amazing. Thank you. Well, I guess wrapping up today, I have one more question for you, and it's just knowing what you know now, what advice would you have given yourself when you were just starting out?
Well, thanks for the question, because I think it's a real important one, and I've reflected on it over time. And, my advice to those that are getting into this field or just graduating from school and figuring out what you want to do is to try a variety of jobs, different employers, different experiences, whether it's a government job, academic research, private industry, such as the path I've chosen, or consulting firms. And, really give yourself an opportunity to explore different workplaces, different projects, and really, see what the whole field is like before settling on a particular area of focus. I would also say, I'd be negligent if I didn't say support your alma mater. And, I've given back a little bit to UC Berkeley for the training I've received, and also support your local, state, national, even international or professional organizations that in this profession, because that will help you cultivate professional connections and friendships that will be lifelong. And it will also help you build your network, which is mutually helpful, not only for career development and job searches, but also as emotional support in times of need. There may be times when you change jobs or lose your job or have some other personal situation, and having a network of colleagues that you can cry on a shoulder is very helpful at times. or bounce off ideas of which way you should go in your career. I would also suggest, think globally, if they have a global perspective on these issues, you can act locally, but think globally. And the last thing I'll say is, be an intern, get internships and have a good mentor, and then become a mentor to others and give, it's sort of pay it forward. I've provided about 11 internships since 1993 to different UC Berkeley grad students in industrial hygiene, and it's a total win-win situation that gives them a lot of experience and gives a lot of benefit to the company to get a lot of work accomplished. And I've also had the opportunity to maintain several of those relationships over the years, and that's been a very rewarding aspect of it as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Hear, some very sage advice for anyone listening. Thank you so much for sharing your time and also for everything that you do for the community. A true environmental health and safety advocate for many years. So thank you for being here. Thank you for all you do and for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thanks, Michelle. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.